Okay, Jan, you asked me if we could do some pumpkins, and I think then also you requested if there were any fall, to make it a little scene or other fall items. And so let's do that today. My husband grows a pumpkin patch for the grandkids every year, and they come and pick them. So I have ready access to some little pumpkins. Of course, the big ones are still getting orange and too hard to bring up, but I brought these 2 pumpkins, and pumpkins come in all colors now and all shapes, and so the variety is just endless. There's even kind of blue pumpkins. Our traditional ones we think of are orange, but I brought these up so that they could be a visual while we're painting. Now, unfortunately, the camera can't get the same angle on them as I'm looking at them for painting, but I did want to bring them up. If I was to turn it this way, I think I'm going to do that and kind of hold it like that. I think you're going to be able to see that. Well, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. But anyway, recognize that our angles are different. They're so easy. They're essentially a circle or a sphere, and then many of the pumpkins have this kind of a textured appearance now, where they come in almost sections, kind of like an orange almost. And I just love these little pumpkins. So another thing I want to note on the pumpkins is your light source. When you're outside and you're looking at a pumpkin, most often your sun's going to be above you and you're just not going to notice it so much, but it's nice to have a highlight on something that you're drawing. And so you may want to have one side or top of your pumpkin area a little lighter, the bottom a little darker. Certainly these crevices or creases are perhaps going to change and alter the color. It depresses here at the top of your pumpkin where the stem goes in. That's going to be a little darker. And so some of those light features are going to help to make it round. I did just a couple of little drawings just to show options. It's always fun to do several of, especially the little pumpkins. Sometimes it's fun to do them this way, and then sometimes it's fun to add something to the pumpkin. And this one I've added, started to add here and added some acorns, which I did a video on acorns earlier. I went out in the garden and pulled some of my acorns and did that video. They're super easy. You can see the shape here, and then just add your color, and again, leave a highlight for them. It helps them in their roundness. Acorn leaves are so fun to paint in the fall because I love them because their colors become exquisite. They're kind of a greenish blue, browns, a little bit of reds and rusts. They just become, to me, extremely charming. So another idea to add to your card so that you have a little bit of a vignette. I pulled this card, which I have done, making it into a wreath. You actually could put some little pumpkins on a wreath, I think. This just brings in some fall items. Again, our acorns, sunflowers, I always think of around this time. Berries, around this time. These are little wheat, the top of wheat. Always a fun thing to bring in. Hoping that these are going to give you a couple ideas. Another flower that I think of in the fall is chrysanthemums. Chrysanthemums actually come in varied colors, and they're easy to do. Remember the kind of the sunflower one we did with all the layering? You would do the very similar thing with your chrysanthemum, where you would just bring in some shapes of color to kind of create the flower, the bloom, and then you're going to add some leaves. The leaves on a chrysanthemum are not exactly round. They have a little bit of an oak shape. I'm trying to think, I haven't gone out and seen them lately, but they do have a little bit of a scallop on the leaves. And so sometimes it's nice just if you can create that kind of one of the little features of them, it helps identify them. So you're not going to have to bring in every little curve, but you just don't make just a leaf shape. You're going to bring a little ragged edges. Chrysanthemums, I believe, the ones I just gave to my daughter had yellow centers. Most, I think, have yellow centers. So if you bring some yellow centers in here, you're going to create a look that's like a chrysanthemum. I'd come back in, again, it's that layering thing where you can't do it all at once, but I'd come back in with some blues and some varied greens in here, and there you go. You've got a little chrysanthemum plant next to your pumpkin. Now you could also add a little bit of a pot here. So your chrysanthemum sitting in a pot here next to your pumpkin. Again, you're going to want to balance out your design so your pot's not at the same level that your pumpkin is. And let's just actually even give this pot a little bottom there. So I hope these are some ideas, and let's go ahead and do a little pumpkin for us. I'm going to do this one. And pumpkins are fun. Again, they're that layering idea. You can do them wet, dry on dry, or I'm just going to bring in a little bit of water on this one. And it's very fun to let the water bleed. Now, in bringing in the water, I'm leaving some places on the paper that don't have the water on them so that we can create some highlights like we talked about, but also some variants in color on our pumpkins. So let's start out with, let's do a little bit of yellow and add a little bit of red to it. Oh, it's already got a little bit of a mix of an orange, but I kind of thought it would be fun if we had a little mixing happen with the water. Sometimes the water will, depending on how much you have on your paper, it's going to go ahead and bleed on down there, and sometimes you're going to have to help the water, but it certainly likes to bleed out, and that's one of the very fun reasons for doing a little water on your paper first, is to let the paint do its own little thing. So we're going to let that dry just a little bit here. I'm going to add just a little bit more so it can, ooh, isn't that just fun when it just follows its own little path? One thing, when I'm looking at the pumpkins, the bottoms are usually not totally curved. And these with the little sections, then the bottoms have the appearance of some little sections also. Just another thing up here, I just noticed that I think that's part of the pumpkin color and not a stem, so I'm adding a little orange there. I'm going to add in a little bit more color and let it bleed down, bringing it down on these seams or crevices. Kind of emphasize those just a little bit right now. I also think blue is a lovely color, so I'm going to bring in just some blue here. I think they're more interesting the more colors they have on them, even though you don't think of them as having a lot of colors. This is that lovely blue I've talked about where, let's just draw another one and kind of make it a bluish color where, oh, they're just the most gorgeous color of blue. We haven't really grown blue small ones, but we do have had some bluish gray larger ones, and we've also had some lovely, they're almost a light greenish color. The stems, as they've been picked, these I just barely picked from the garden. They're still quite a green color, but as they dry out, and if you're picking them up at the store, then usually your stem's going to be kind of a brownish. I'm staying away from the where I've put the color in the pumpkin there because I didn't want it to bleed into my stem. But I'll come back to the stem and we'll add some other color there. In fact, right now I think I'm going to add just a touch of purple on the edge. Maybe do that there too. This one, we talked about maybe making it that lovely bluish color. So let's go ahead and, my pen's been bleeding just a little bit. If I put water to it, it's supposed to be archival, but if I put water on it too quickly, it seems to have a little bit of bleeding going on, unfortunately. There's also the fun pumpkins that have those warts. Not quite a fan of those as much. I do like them in an arrangement of pumpkins, but they remind me more of squash. Well, pumpkins are a squash, but the warted ones, I view them more as a squash than. Okay, I'm not liking that green that I'm bringing on here, but I'm really liking the blue. And bring it just a little different blue and see if we can't turn that green into the that blue color we'd like. Yeah. Okay, I brought some of the purple back over here on this guy to help bring in the darks of the crevices. Blend that in just a little bit so we're not seeing it exactly as purple. And I might do that over here too. Okay, and we talked about the tops. We'd like to have them just have a little bit of darkness, or a little darker, as well as the bottoms. So it's all about coming back in with another layer, and your layer can be a similar color. You can come in with some oranges, and if they start to dull up as they're drying, yellow will make them vibrant on top. Usually you will have a darker color in watercolor and the lighter color first, but yellow actually can come in on top of an orange and really brighten it up. So I'm not going to play around right now while it's wet, because then rather than having then the look starts to be muddied. Having the freshness of the look starts to kind of come in and be just a little bit muddied. But this is, hopefully this is going to give you a good start. I'm going to just come over here, switch for a minute, because I kind of thought it would be fun to do this guy. And as I drew him, I realized I don't really need to draw these lines on here, but we can come back in, and the purpose of the lines was to remind me that it's quite a little bit darker where these lines are. The pumpkin is so cool how it has the multi-colors, and we saw how orange it is on the bottom. Now, I think as it ripens, this orange comes up just a little bit, but my memory tells me that the yellow, no, the green stays. Even though it oranges up a little more than it is, the green kind of stays also. So I'm gonna see, I wasn't quite sure how I was gonna get this lovely little interesting texture. I'm gonna come back in with orange and bring it up from the bottom, but hopefully leave enough that we can get this interesting texture. And some of the texture is that there's a lot of white space. But one of the other interesting things about the texture is they're not lines, they've got color jagging out, so we're going to get that characteristic, and hopefully that's going to identify this unique texture that we're seeing. I'll spritz my paints. Let's see. That just helps, so we've got a variety of wet paint to draw from. Now, the same thing's going to be the case here with this, is we can't keep working it while it's wet. So let's leave it just a little bit. So we've got the three colors going on, and I'm noticing that I'm not sure I'm doing it exactly right, because it's the white sections that are pretty prominent. And then the green is kind of where the stripes are. So I'm going to leave that one. Let's come back here and just lighten or brighten these up with another layer. Oh, I didn't mention one other thing, Jan, is I'm using a little larger brush than sometimes I do for my smaller pictures, and that helps with the water and paint. It carries more water, so the wet on wet, it's bringing in a lovely amount of water, and I don't have to work it so hard to bring in that amount of water. And it also brings in color. So my choice was a larger brush to do these small pictures as they are, but a larger brush. So I've got a little uneven bottom going. That doesn't matter. We can just create the bottom a little longer than the picture originally was drawn. Okay. Again, we're going to start to get muddy if I work too much with what we just, with the wetness now that's happening. But hopefully this is giving you a start here. And you see how we're darker on the bottom? Trying to be a little darker here. That still needs work on. This one guy certainly isn't finished yet. These I'd bring in just a tad of green, I think, up on the stem, and just for contrast up here. You could even bring in some blues or some purples like we talked about on this other guy. So the same thing here. The stem certainly needs some work, but it's too wet to go there. Let's just bring in just a second layer on this guy, and then hopefully this is giving you a good start for what you wanted. I think for this blue, I think water is a really good idea to bring in. And I'm going to say a little different intensity of blues also. So this back here would be a little darker because they're the stem, behind the stem there. Gonna add just a little bit of yellow to this. It's gonna kind of create a little green, but it'll be a highlight. Okay, so we're gonna sign our work. This guy just got started, but for the video timing, we're going to stop here, and hopefully this is a good start. Now, Jen, if you have other questions, be sure to ask, because I don't hesitate, because I don't mind at all starting another video from this point. So happy painting pumpkins, and let me know how it works out. Thanks, Jen, for asking. Bye-bye.